You're at the planner's table. Staff sits over there. That was the first thing my best friend Caitlin said to me when I arrived at her welcome dinner. No hug, no thank you, no smile. Just those 10 words, delivered in front of 150 guests at the candlelit beachside reception I had designed for her. I stood frozen in my pale green gown, the same color she'd picked for her bridesmaids, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. But the flicker of amusement in her eyes confirmed it. She meant every word. My name is Isabel Tran, and I've been in the luxury wedding business for nearly a decade. I've orchestrated rooftop ceremonies in Santorini, ice castle receptions in Iceland, and once a 5-day wedding cruise through the Greek Isles for a billionaire's daughter. But none of those jobs prepared me for what happened in Bali, when the person I considered my closest friend turned my loyalty into a weapon. I met Caitlin Ross in college. She was everything I wasn't. Blonde, wealthy, effortlessly magnetic. But she never made me feel like less. At least not back then. We became inseparable. She cheered me on as I launched my business from my parents' garage and called me her ride or die when I finally landed my first celebrity client. I never once questioned her intentions. So when she asked me to be both her maid of honor and wedding planner, I didn't hesitate. She claimed it was because she trusted me more than anyone. I believed her. I spent 8 months pouring everything into her destination wedding. I coordinated flights for 90 guests, negotiated exclusive rates with the resort, even hired a Balinese artisan to design custom lanterns for the ceremony. Every flower, every table setting, every plate of saffron-grilled lobster, mine. And because she said they were tight on budget, I floated most of the costs through my company's account, trusting that the final transfer would come once her father approved everything. It didn't. 2 weeks before the wedding, I followed up with her dad's assistant and got a vague reply. Caitlin brushed it off. He's just busy with merger stuff. Don't stress, Is. So I didn't. I believed her. But tonight, standing in that open-air pavilion beneath strings of fairy lights I had personally strung, she looked at me like I was the hired help. The planner's table is over there, she repeated, louder this time, gesturing to a back corner near the waitstaff station. Laughter fluttered from the surrounding tables. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Her fiancé, Blake, glanced at me briefly, then looked away. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I tried to laugh it off. You're joking, right? She tilted her head. Why would I joke? You're not here as my guest, Is. You're working. You said yourself, this is your biggest job of the year. She smiled sweetly, then turned to clink glasses with her bridesmaids, none of whom had lifted a finger during planning, but were all seated at the head table. I stood there for another moment, unsure if I was going to throw up or cry. Instead, I nodded. Understood, I said, my voice tight. I'll act accordingly. Then I turned and walked straight out of the venue. Outside, I leaned against the railing overlooking the ocean. The waves crashed violently, echoing the storm brewing inside me. My hands trembled, but not from sadness. From something sharper, something cold. I opened my phone, pulled up the shared wedding folder, and scrolled to the contracts. The entire event, venue, catering, lights, staff, boats, spa packages, even the welcome dinner, was booked under my company's name, guaranteed by my personal credit line. Caitlin hadn't paid a cent, and then I saw it. A forwarded email from her fiancé to the resort manager. Don't worry about the vendor, she's a friend. We'll squeeze her for the full weekend, then cut ties after. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I took a screenshot, saved it, and slowly smiled. They thought I was the help? Fine. I'd help them remember exactly who held the keys to their perfect little paradise, because if Caitlin Ross wanted a wedding to remember, then that's exactly what I was about to give her. I didn't sleep that night. While the other guests drank mojitos and danced barefoot on the beach, I sat in my villa with contracts spread across the bed like broken promises. The resort lights flickered through the window, casting long shadows that danced across my laptop screen as I scrolled through vendor receipts, wire confirmations, and invoices, all in my company's name. My name. They had played me. But what hurt more than the betrayal was how easy I had made it for them. I had trusted Caitlin so blindly, so completely, that I never saw the trap I was walking into. I'd covered deposits for the venue, the decor, even the private catamaran cruise scheduled for Sunday. I'd done it all because Caitlin said she'd pay me back with interest once her dad's accounts cleared. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I knew the truth. There were no funds coming. I was never going to be paid. I wasn't her maid of honor. I wasn't her friend. I was the free labor holding up the image she wanted to project to her rich friends. A flawless, luxurious wedding with just enough humble roots to seem relatable. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I got organized. I called Dewa, the florist, first. Then Arya, who ran the lighting and sound team. Then Katut, our catering liaison. They were all local vendors I'd built relationships with over the years. They respected me, trusted me. And when I told them there might be a payment issue, they didn't push back. They asked what I wanted to do. Hold, I told each one. Don't cancel, just hold everything until I give the final word. Caitlin had no idea I was buying time. At breakfast, she breezed in like nothing happened the night before. She wore a silk robe that matched the linens I personally had ordered for her bridal suite. "Oh, good," she chirped as she walked by me without stopping. "Can you make sure the welcome bags are delivered to everyone's rooms before noon?" No thank you, no apology, just instructions. Like I was her assistant. I forced a smile and said, "Of course." But inside, I was boiling. After breakfast, I followed the bridal party to their spa day. Caitlin had insisted the whole group go for pre-wedding massages, manicures, and hair trials. They giggled as they sipped champagne, posing for Instagram stories I wasn't tagged in. While they lounged in luxury, I excused myself under the pretense of checking logistics. I returned to my room and opened the shared Dropbox folder again. I hadn't looked at the camera roll in weeks. The files were all in neat little folders. Engagement shoot, bridal dress fitting, final floral samples. Then I found a hidden folder I hadn't seen before, tucked under a mislabeled file. I clicked. There they were. Photos of Caitlin and Blake in New York. Taken 4 months ago, at the same time, Caitlin had told me she was too stressed to fly out for our joint birthday weekend. In one photo, they were sitting in a rooftop lounge with a man I instantly recognized. Devin Caldwell, the CEO of one of my top clients. The caption read, "Thanks for connecting us, Iz. Blake and I are pitching our startup." Startup? My stomach dropped. I clicked again. More photos, then a video. Caitlin laughing, holding up a martini, saying, "Honestly, if Izzy pulls this off, we won't have to pay a dime for anything." Blake, off-screen, replied, "She thinks she's in the wedding. She's in the business." And then Caitlin again. "She built the stage. We're just here to take the spotlight." I slammed my laptop shut. Everything made sense now. I wasn't just the planner. I was the leverage, the one with connections, the one with vendor power, the one stupid enough to float a 6-figure event on promises. They weren't just using me. They were parading it like a private joke. I stood up, heart pounding in my chest, and stared at myself in the mirror. No more favors, no more grace. If they thought I was just the help, I was about to show them exactly what the help could do. And it all started with a single message I sent to the resort director. Effective immediately, all services under Isabel Tran Events are suspended pending payment in full. Their dream wedding was now hanging by a thread, and I was holding the scissors. The silence before a storm has a sound. It's the rustle of palm trees before a typhoon, the click of heels on marble as a bride walks into disaster, the quiet hum of a generator moments before the lights go out. And on Caitlin Ross's wedding day, that silence was me, walking through the resort with a clipboard in one hand and a storm in the other. By noon, the pressure was mounting. The florist texted me, "We're holding delivery per your instructions. Bride's coordinator keeps asking where the arch is." The catering team messaged next. Guests arriving soon. Still waiting on green light. And then the audio crew. Clients requesting mic check. Confirm we're still on schedule? Each message chipped away at the illusion Caitlin was trying so hard to maintain. She had no idea I'd pulled every string from the inside, tying her perfect wedding into one tight knot that could unravel with a single word. I gave them all the same response. Stand by. At 2 p.m., Caitlin's voice echoed through the bridal suite hallway. Where the hell are the chairs? I was standing just outside, pretending to be on the phone. Her tone was frantic, clipped. Why is nothing here yet? Where's the planner? I stepped inside like I hadn't been watching everything unfold. They're delayed, I said calmly. Some of the trucks got held at the gate. Her cheeks flushed. Well, fix it. That's your job, isn't it? I smiled. You're right. Let me make a call. I walked back into the hallway, pulled out my phone, and finally sent the text I'd been holding for hours. Execute full halt. Do not deliver. No services proceed without payment in full. There was no going back now. Minutes later, the first domino fell. The florist's van turned around. The caterers shut their kitchens. The string quartet packed up their instruments. One by one, the vendors I had built relationships with trusted me enough to stand down. At 3:10 p.m., Caitlin burst into the prep tent, barefoot, her curls frizzing in the tropical heat. There's no arch. There's no flowers. My dress isn't steamed. What is happening? I looked her dead in the eye and said, You told me I was the help, Caitlin, so I stopped helping. Blake appeared behind her, his shirt half-buttoned and expression pinched. You're sabotaging this, he growled. No, I said. I'm just withdrawing services that haven't been paid for. He took a step closer. You signed contracts. Correct. And those contracts are under my company's name, which means I'm liable if you don't pay. So I've protected my business. Caitlin's lips trembled. You're ruining the best day of my life. No, I said. You did that the moment you turned me into your unpaid servant and laughed about it behind my back. And then I handed her the final receipt. The grand total of everything she owed. 6 figures due immediately. She stared at the number like it was written in another language. I'll get my dad to wire it, she whispered. I already spoke to your father, I said. He's in the Maldives. His assistant confirmed he has no intention of covering costs for a wedding he never approved. Blake's face went pale. You called my dad? Caitlin croaked. I nodded. And I sent him the video, the one where you said I'd never see a dime. That was the crack in the dam. Caitlin screamed, a shrill, uncontrolled sound that shattered whatever grace she had left. What did you do, Isabel? I tilted my head. I did what any professional would do. I cut off a client who refused to pay. Just then, the resort manager walked in, holding a folded envelope. Miss Tran, he said, nodding. As requested, we've halted all activities until the financial discrepancy is resolved. Caitlin turned on him. You can't do this. He didn't flinch. We most certainly can. And then came the final blow. A guest stormed into the tent, phone in hand. Hey, is it true the wedding's canceled? Someone just posted on TikTok. Vendors are leaving. It's going viral. Caitlin stumbled backward like she'd been slapped. Blake grabbed the phone. His face drained of color. 20,000 views in 10 minutes, he muttered. And they tagged the knot. The wedding wasn't just collapsing, it was broadcasting. Comment the number 1 if you want to see how Caitlin's downfall goes even further. I watched the panic ripple through the wedding tent like fire catching dry silk. Guests pacing, murmuring, Caitlin shrieking into her phone. Blake standing frozen, clutching his forehead like he could physically stop the train wreck unfolding in real time. The once elegant candlelit ceremony setup now looked like the aftermath of a canceled concert. Half set, half abandoned, all falling apart. And I was the match that lit the fuse. Let me be clear. This wasn't about revenge for a missed chair or a hurt feeling. This was about respect, for my work, my name, my worth. They took what I built and tried to turn me into a stepping stone, The quiet help behind the curtain while they took center stage. They expected me to smile, stay quiet, and clean up the mess afterward. But they forgot something. This stage, I built it. By 4 p.m., vendors were driving off the property. I had coordinated every one of their exits down to the minute. No shouting, no scene, just silent departures that left the bride and groom in a slowly collapsing fantasy. Caitlin paced barefoot across the wet lawn, mascara streaked and veil dragging behind her like a defeated flag. She found me by the bar, where I stood sipping iced water, like I didn't just pull the pin from a social grenade. "You absolute witch," she hissed, her voice shaking. "Do you know what you've done?" "Saved my company," I replied calmly, "and taught you a lesson about underestimating people who once loved you." Blake marched over, fists clenched. "You can't just delete a wedding." I raised an eyebrow. "Watch me." That's when the resort manager returned with the final nail in their dream's coffin. "I'm sorry," he said, holding a clipboard. "We've had to cancel the reception hall reservation. We require payment in advance now. And the suite block for tonight, it's been released." Caitlin looked like she couldn't breathe. "Where are we supposed to sleep?" The manager gestured politely. "There are other guests arriving who have confirmed bookings. I suggest securing alternate lodging." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But inside, I was screaming with satisfaction. They tried to make me feel like I didn't belong here. Now they were the ones without a place to stay. Guests began whispering louder. Phones rang with questions. Someone shouted from the back, "Are the shuttles still running, or is this whole thing a scam?" The illusion shattered. I turned to leave, ready to disappear before the whole thing spiraled further. But then, a voice called out, "Wait! Isabel!" It was Devon Caldwell, the CEO I recognized from that rooftop photo. The same one Caitlin and Blake had been wooing behind my back. I hadn't seen him all day. I froze. He stepped forward, sunglasses in hand, eyes scanning the wreckage. "What the hell happened here?" Caitlin ran to him. "She destroyed everything. This was our launch party." Launch party. My stomach dropped. Blake stepped in, voice low but urgent. "Devon, don't listen to her. We're still set for the app release. The investors are coming to the after-party. This doesn't change anything." Devon blinked. "You told me Isabel was on board," he said, turning slowly to Blake. "That she was your co-founder." Silence. Complete, aching silence. I stared at Blake. "What?" Devon looked at me, confused. "You didn't know?" Blake looked like he'd swallowed glass. "They used my name," I said, voice trembling. "To pitch your startup?" Devon nodded. "All the materials, the pitch deck. Your bio was in it. That's the only reason I agreed to meet. I thought Isabel Tranovents was backing the launch." My knees nearly buckled. They hadn't just used me for the wedding. They had faked a business partnership with my brand to secure funding from one of my top-tier clients. That wasn't just betrayal. That was fraud. I turned to Caitlin and Blake, but they were already backing away. "No, wait," Caitlin stammered. "It was just a placeholder. Devon, it's not what you think." But Devon's face had hardened. "I don't invest in liars." And with that, he walked away. They say karma takes its time. But that day in Bali, it arrived early, and it showed up in a tailored suit named Devon Caldwell. After Devon exposed their lie, that they had faked my involvement to secure funding for their wedding-themed startup, the fallout was instant. Guests scattered, investors backed out. The wedding was officially over, but I was just getting started. I returned to my villa, locked the door, and forwarded Devon the proof I had gathered. Screenshots of Caitlin and Blake's texts mocking me, the pitch deck with my name falsely listed as co-founder, and emails from resort staff confirming unpaid services. It was all there, a digital trail of arrogance and deception. The next morning, I woke to 2 voicemails. The first was from Devon. "Thank you for sending everything. I've already informed my legal team. You were never part of this, and I'll make sure everyone knows that." The second was from Caitlin. "Izzy, please. We messed up. But this is getting out of hand. We're losing everything. Just stop. But I didn't respond. Not yet. By the time I boarded my flight back to California, their wedding had become a trending disaster on social media. One of the guests, an influencer with over 1 million followers, had posted a video titled "The Wedding That Imploded Live." It had 3 million views in 24 hours. Reporters started calling my office. Vendors from all over the country messaged me with their own horror stories about entitled clients and unpaid bills. A few even asked if I'd be interested in co-producing a documentary, but I wasn't chasing fame. I wanted justice. I sent a cease and desist letter to Caitlin and Blake, demanding they remove my name from all business materials. My lawyer added a clause. Failure to comply would trigger a formal fraud complaint. They folded immediately. 3 weeks later, I learned Blake had been dropped from his former startup incubator. Apparently, word had spread. No one wanted to work with someone who burned bridges before launch day. As for Caitlin, her father may have refused to pay for the wedding, but he definitely wasn't pleased to see the family name dragged through scandal. I heard she moved back to Miami, cut off from the trust fund until she matured. But the final blow came quietly, and it came from me. I mailed them a framed photo. It was a screenshot of Caitlin's Instagram post, taken just hours before everything fell apart. She was smiling beneath a flower arch that never got delivered, captioned, "About to marry my best friend. Couldn't have done it without you, Izzy." Beneath it, I added a simple message in gold calligraphy. "You're welcome." I didn't hear from them again. In the months that followed, my business thrived. Clients appreciated my transparency, my integrity, and yes, even my spine. I turned the Bali disaster into a lesson, one I now speak about at industry events. Know your value, or someone else will put a price on it for you. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was precise. Because revenge, when done right, doesn't look like screaming or breaking things. It looks like walking away with everything they tried to steal from you, your name, your power, your peace, and leaving them to sit in the ashes of the empire they built on lies. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. No more pretending. No more pleasing. No more playing the part they assigned me. Just me, standing tall, unbothered, unbought, free. Comment the number 2 if you think Caitlin and Blake got exactly what they deserved. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories like this one.